Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere dry, old and unusually cranky about bedtime habits. Imagine this, you're walking through the ancient city of Susa, capital of a once glorious Persian empire, where even the night air seems to whisper, "She, you're tired, of course you are. You've had a long day being whoever you are in this sleepy story." And just as you open your mouth for a satisfying, jaw-stretching yawn, someone gasps. You freeze, a man in robes lurking in the shadows narrows his eyes. In Susa, yawning out loud isn't just rude, it's borderline criminal. They might not throw you into the lion pit, that's more of a Babylonian pastime. But let's just say you won't be getting invited to the palace gardens anytime soon. And if you thought snoring was bad, oh sweetheart, you wouldn't last a night here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. They're bonus points if you're wearing socks with tiny camels on them now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle down a street paved with warm clay tiles, your sandals making the softest brush of dust with every step. Mud brick walls rise on either side, glowing faintly under the flicker of oil lamps tucked into wall niches. It feels like you're walking inside a half-remembered dream. But the first thing you notice about Susa isn't the grandeur, it's the silence. There's no laughter, no songs, not even a sneeze, and certainly no yawning, the most harmless of human sounds. No, not here. You pause beside a crooked tamarind tree and lift your sleeve to hide a tiny suppressed yawn. Just as you exhale, a set of quiet footsteps approaches from behind. A guard, staff in hand, eyes sharp, passes by like a passing shadow, his glance lingering a second too long. You pretend to smooth your hair. He says nothing, walks on, but something about his silence is louder than words. Why would an ancient city fear yawning? To understand that, you'd need to know a bit about the man running the show, King Artaxerxes II, a ruler said to love three things: wine, tall stone walls, and absolute quiet, according to whispers and a few unofficial clay tablets. There was once a banquet where a young courtier yawned a bit too heartily. The king spilled his wine in surprise. The yawn offender never seen again. Some say he was exiled to teach children how to yawn internally. Others suggest, well, let's just say he took a nap that never ended. You stroll along the west wall, where signs carved into wooden plaques say, "Loud sounds after sunset will be fined." One of them shows a man mid-yawn getting his ear pulled by what appears to be a very enthusiastic official. It's ridiculous, sure, but even more absurd. There was a whole yawning law passed during the king's 11th year. It read, "Any audible yawn causing discomfort to nearby citizens shall be penalized unless accompanied by a medical exemption issued by the temple scribes." I mean, who writes these things? Were these the ancient ancestors of today's noise headphone designers? You keep walking, ears tuned. You catch the rustle of leaves, the faint gurgle of an underground aqueduct, and now and then, the sound of a missed yawn. That's what you call it, the sound of someone trying to yawn without actually making a sound. Something like HNNPHMMHH, and then nothing. An old woman clutches an embroidered cloth to her mouth and glances nervously over her shoulder. Still, not everyone in Susa obeys so quietly. There are rumors of a group called the Order of the Silent, just citizens who train themselves in advanced yawning suppression techniques. They meet beneath the bathhouse complex, sipping mint tea specially brewed to block drowsiness, even though it has a side effect of making your nose itch uncontrollably, helpful when you're trying to cover up a yawn with a fake sneeze. Some historians still debate whether the anti-yawning law was strictly enforced or more of a symbolic show of state control. One scholar wrote that the ban on yawns was a method of psychological conditioning to remind people that even their most private urges were public business. You turn a corner and find yourself in front of a large wooden gate leading to a merchant inn. Over the arch are stone carvings of lions, but these lions aren't roaring, they're yawning. Is it satire, a forgotten tribute, or a hidden rebellion carved in sandstone? No one knows. You lie down on a straw mattress beneath the portico, breathing in the warm scent of old bricks and baked spice. Somewhere in the darkness, a nightbird chirps. Your eyelids droop, your mouth parts, but you remember. You yawn quietly, like a whisper folded into the hush of ancient Persia. A secret between you and the stars, and perhaps now, just perhaps, you're beginning to understand. Here, silence isn't weakness, it's craft, and the story's only just begun. You wake with a start, well, not really wake. You were never fully asleep, not in Susa. Here, sleep comes slow and careful, like a diplomat entering a tense meeting. The sky is still dark, the kind of deep indigo that makes shadows look thicker than they are. Somewhere nearby, a donkey-sized dot, and above that sigh ... Another sound, quiet, subtle, but unmistakable. Someone yawns loudly. You sit up so fast your straw mat creaks like a disapproving elder. A moment later, a door slams open down the alley, torches flare. Two guards march out with wooden batons and sleepy rage in their eyes. You watch as they turn the corner, stomping toward the source of the offense. Somewhere a man stammers, "I didn't mean to," but the rest is lost in the night. You lie back down, heart thudding, just a yawn. That's all it takes to wake the beast. And that beast's name is Artaxerxes II. Let's talk about him, shall we? You've seen the stone-reliefed high cheekbones, rigid beard curls, and a crown that looks like a stack of perfectly arranged pastries. But behind that carved perfection was a man who valued order like a modern librarian on a caffeine binge. This was the guy who, according to temple records, once paused an entire state ritual because someone shuffled their feet too loudly. He hated sudden noises, hated disruptions, hated anything that reminded him that humans, even royal ones, were messy, noisy creatures. Yawns, the ultimate offense. Because what is a yawn but your body declaring, "I'm done pretending to care"? And a yawning courtier is like a silent rebellion, mouth first. The royal court adapted fast. You imagine ministers training to blink slower, to time their breathing, to chew date cakes only after the king took a sip of wine. There's even a note from one court scribe. 2 scribes were dismissed for clearing throats simultaneously. We mourn them quietly. Now, most kings build monuments. Artaxerxes built silence. He had whole wings of the palace designed to absorb sound, cushioned floors, draped hallways, gardens arranged to redirect the breeze so it wouldn't whistle through columns. And somewhere in all that tranquility, the Yawning Decree, officially titled The Regulation of Public Respiratory Disruption. The decree outlined when, where, and how you could let your drowsiness show. You could yawn softly between the 3rd and 4th hour past sundown only if you were seated, alone, and at least 5 cubits away from a noble structure, which was nowhere, really. So the people did what people always do under absurd rules. They got creative. You pass a mural on a nearby wall as you walk toward the bazaar. At first glance, it looks like a hunting scene, riders on horseback, lions prowling. But look closer and you see the lions aren't hunting. They're yawning, the riders, each one with a hand subtly covering their mouth. It's a message, not rebellion exactly, just a quiet wink from one tired soul to another. Even the potters got in on it. In the marketplace, you'd find clay mugs shaped like yawning cats or sheep They sold sleep jars, little containers said to trap your yawn and keep it for later. You'd breathe into one, stopper it, and uncap it in the privacy of your home. Some claimed it worked. Others just liked the ritual. But the king, he didn't. Laughed. In fact, he created a new position in court, the yawning marshal. Their job patrolled the palace and fine anyone whose yawn could be heard from more than 3 cubits away. Fines ranged from losing a day's wages to performing acts of public apology. One servant was made to wear a painted mask of a closed mouth for a full moon cycle. Still, some historians remain unsure if the laws were truly enforced that harshly. There's debate over whether Artaxerxes was genuinely offended by sound, or if this was a clever tactic to test loyalty. Was the anti-yawn stance a way of keeping courtiers perpetually on edge alert, anxious, obedient? Others say the king's obsession stemmed from childhood. Trollman astrologers yawn interpreted as ill omen during a royal birth. No one knows for sure, but what is certain is that by the middle of Artaxerxes' reign, people had stopped yawning in public altogether. Entire generations raised on the art of silent breath control. You take a seat at a quiet bench under a fig tree. A boy passes by with a basket of almonds, then stops, eyes you warily, and mimics a soft throat dash clear dot, a secret code. The question is, are you safe? You raise your pinky slightly. He nods. All clear. He walks on, and you sit there wondering, is this silence peace, or is it something else? Attention, a stillness held too long, the kind of silence that buzzes in your ears like static after too much quiet. You close your eyes, your jaw shifts, the yawn comes again, this time like a ghost pressing against your lungs. You let it out gently, so gently. A whisper through closed lips, not a sound, just the wind. Somewhere far off a guard looks up. And somewhere deeper the story continues. You've been walking for what feels like hours. Though time in Susa moves like warm honey, slow, sticky, and vaguely suspicious. The air smells like figs, old parchment and sandalwood smoke drifting from temple braziers. And as you turn the corner into a quiet courtyard with cracked mosaics underfoot, you hear murmurs, not prayers, not merchants. A meeting. You stop there. Beneath a worn canopy of linen and shadows, a group of men and women sit in a semicircle. No uniforms, no banners, just robes and dull tones, sandals worn thin, and eyes that dart like mice. One man gestures, index finger raised to his lips. Another scribbles something onto a wax tablet and immediately wipes it clean. You've stumbled into something secret, something important, and very, very sleepy. Welcome to the Midnight Council on Yawning Etiquette. That's not what they call themselves, of course. Their official name, if you can read the seal pressed into the beeswax beside the main scribers, the Imperial Subcommittee for Auditory Restfulness and Civic Decorum. Catchy, huh? But really, these are the people responsible for turning one man's mild annoyance into policy for an entire civilization. They debate, record, and revise the kingdom's rules about sound, with special attention given to yawning. Tonight's topic, judging from the slow and heated gestures, seems to involve jaw angles. One scholar waves a model skull in the air, its mandible wired to simulate motion. Another shakes a basket of dried beans, some kind of improvised sound meter. A third rises and points to a scroll. You edge a bit closer and catch a whispered phrase. If the angle exceeds 3 fingers, it becomes a declaration of exhaustion and defiance. Of course, to yawn too widely, in their view, is a political act. It implies boredom, and nothing threatens power like the suggestion that someone isn't impressed. You watch as the council votes, silent thumbs raised, then a collective bow of heads. Decision reached. The new guideline, yawning exceeding a width of 3 fingers, shall require an immediate murmured apology, even if no one heard it. One woman, younger than the rest, raises her hand. She suggests tentatively that perhaps yawns aren't always intentional. Perhaps people are just tired, or ill, or bored because a 7-hour grain tax speech is, well, objectively boring. The council turns to her. There's a long pause. Then an elder leans forward and whispers, "Sleep is not the king's enemy, but indifference is." There it is. The real reason yawns are feared. Not because they're noisy, but because they're honest. You slink back into the shadows as the meeting disperses. Scrolls are rolled up, candles snuffed. The woman who spoke lingers behind, packing her satchel with a quiet sigh. You almost speak to her, almost ask, "Why do you stay?" But something tells you she already knows the answer, because silence, here, isn't just survival. It's duty. As you walk away, you think back to something you once heard. The stricter the rule, the stranger the loophole. And oh, the loopholes. You pass a house whose door is carved with a symbol. 3 half circles nested like a rippling pond. It's a code. This family practices subvocal yawning, a technique taught in certain temple schools. Instead of opening the mouth, the yawner flexes the diaphragm and exhales through the nose in a special pattern. Harmless, legal, technically. The trick. It sounds exactly like someone appreciating incense. You try it. A soft emphy through your nostrils, convincing but a bit ticklish. Up ahead, you spot a child sitting on a low wall, watching the stars. He opens his mouth wide but silently, then slowly presses his fingers to his temples. A training exercise. The silent stretch. Sees you and grins. You grin back. And just like that, for one moment, you're not a traveler. You're part of it. This strange, sleepy, beautiful world where even a yawn is an act of theater still. Questions linger. Why was this obsession allowed to grow? Why did no one say this is ridiculous? Why did silence win? Some historians argue it was all about hierarchy. The farther you were from power, the louder you could be. But the closer you got, temple administration, the quieter you had to become. Others point to a celestial explanation. Ancient astronomers once believed yawning created invisible breezes that disrupted the alignment of the stars. If enough people yawned at once, a comet might swerve. And then there's the darker theory that yawns opened the soul, that each yawn was a door, and too many open doors invited spirits. Ghosts. Regret. Maybe that's why the council meets only after dark. You cross a narrow footbridge as dawn begins to tease the sky with pale blue streaks. Birds chirp cautiously like they too are waiting for permission. You yawn just a little. No one's watching now, but even so, you keep it quiet, just in case. By midday, the city of Susa feels like a sleepy oven. The clay streets radiate warmth like a fresh loaf of bread. You trail your fingers along the shadowed walls, weaving between sun-baked carts, carefully avoiding the gaze of the ever-watchful guards. And then you see it, a line, a long one, twisting around a courtyard shaded with fraying awnings and the occasional burst of pigeon wings. People of every stripe, merchants, bakers, even a scribe with ink on his ear, are all fidgeting in various states of restrained misery. Some fan themselves with papyrus scraps. Others practice slow, deliberate breathing. You wander closer and tap the shoulder of the nearest person, a woman balancing a basket of lemons on her hip. "What's this for?" you whisper. She doesn't answer right away, just tilts her head toward the front of the line. You follow her gaze. A wooden sign painted with official lettering reads, "Yawning License and Rest Tax Office, Branch 3. You blink. Wait. A what now? The woman sighs silently, of course, and says out the side of her mouth, "It's license renewal season. They raised the surcharge for audible yawns this year." You blink again. Apparently, in Artaxerxes Persia, there are only 2 certainties, death and yawn taxes. According to the newer interpretations of the yawning decree, if you must yawn publicly, you need a certificate, the certificate of controlled fatigue expression. Without it, you risk fines or worse. A mandatory lecture from the royal acoustic officer, which is rumored to be as long and sleep-inducing as a camel census report. The tax is tiered. Low-ranking citizens pay a few copper coins per incident, but the wealthy pay exponentially more. The logic: loud yawns from nobles carry more weight, more impact, more disrespect. You shuffle into the line. Up ahead, a small boy in an oversized tunic yawns quietly and gets a pinch from his father. Another woman clutches her silent yawn exemption token, which looks suspiciously like a flat shell tied with string. You ask her if it works. She shrugs. "Depends on the officer," she murmurs, "and their mood." You reach the front and are handed a clay form to fill out. It asks for your name, your place of sleep, the average number of hours you rest per night, your history of vocal fatigue, expressions, and whether you plan to yawn recreationally, medicinally, or under duress. You check all three. The clerk, a pale man with a strange twitch in his left eye, eyes your answers and raises a quill. Do you have a sponsor for your license? He asks. As if you're applying to join a guild of traveling harpists, you blink. A sponsor. He sighs and points to a poster behind him. Silent Ambassador Program, bring a friend. Suppress a sound. If you convince someone else to register for controlled yawning, you get a partial refund. Pyramid schemes, but make them quiet. You decline and take the standard path. He grumbles and stamps your form with a heavy fish-shaped seal. You now owe 5 copper pieces and 1 feather, actual feather, from a dove or similarly soft bird. Symbolic currency, they call it. You pay the coin, but not the feather. He shrugs and whispers, bring it next time. As you exit, you spot a man in the corner gaunt, draped in linens, holding up a painted sign that reads, Free the Yawn. You are not your silence. A tiny crowd watches, some smile. Others shake their heads. A child giggles and starts to yawn, but his mother gently covers his mouth before the sound escapes. You keep walking. You pass another booth labeled Rest Insurance Advisory. A woman inside gestures to a pamphlet that says, Protect your rest events. Loud yawn, we've got you covered. There's a cartoon of a man napping behind a curtain, with a tiny disclaimer that reads, Coverage not valid during eclipses, parades, or civic feast days. You can't help but to laugh quietly. Some historians believe the entire yawning tax system was less about maintaining peace and more about revenue. After all, it gave bureaucrats something to manage, scribes something to copy, and citizens a strange shared experience. Others argue it was a moral campaign, that Artaxerxes believed public discipline began with private restraint. Control your yawns, control your impulses, control your impulses, control your loyalty. Still others, they say it was just petty revenge. That once, long ago, during a state recital, someone yawned during the king's favorite story, and he never quite got over it. The records are, of course, silent. You pass a street vendor selling yawn muzzles, tiny padded loops designed to wrap gently around the jaw. Discreet, elegant, scribe-approved, the merchant whispers. You raise an eyebrow and keep moving. At the edge of the square, you see something stranger still. A man sitting behind a booth labeled Yawning Lessons, 1 copper. Beneath it whispered, Yawns only, guaranteed undetectable. You sit down. He hands you a dried apricot. Chew slow, he says. You do? Now breathe through your nose, stretch your jaw, but don't open. You follow. The sensation is surreal, a kind of internal stretch, like a private exhale that doesn't belong to sound. He nods in approval. You'll be fine, he whispers. Just don't dream too loud. You thank him, walk away, and wonder what if this was never about sound at all? What if it's always been about control? The illusion of peace that hums just below the silence. Like tension in a harp string, always pulled, never played. You pause beneath a fig tree and let the wind find your face. The urge rises again, reflexive, slow, unyielding. You close your eyes and yawn without a sound. Perfect. You wake just before dusk to the smell of incense and the unmistakable sound of flutes as soft, breathy tones drift through the alleyways, curling around walls and weaving between shutters like sleepy snakes. You sit up slowly. Your back protests. Your neck crackles. Someone nearby coughs in that rehearsed, non-alarming way people use to signal, I'm fine. I promise, don't call the guards. And then you hear it again. That haunting melody. Not just flutes, a whole chorus of them. You follow the sound through narrow lanes until the stone gives way to packed dirt and the air feels cooler, tinged with the earthy dampness of ritual. Before you stands a wide courtyard framed by stone pillars and torchlit braziers. At the far end is a temple, low, simple, and perfectly symmetrical. A man in a white robe turns as you approach. His voice, though nearly a whisper, is filled with polite authority. You're just in time, he says. We are releasing the yawn spirits. Of course you are. The Temple of Slumber's Breath is an old institution, older even than Artaxerxes' paranoia. Its priests once presided over dreams and omens, interpreting sleep as sacred, and yawns as messages from the divine. Now, they play music designed not to awaken, but to guide drowsiness in safe, sacred directions. You're invited to join the back of the gathering, dozens of people seated in careful rings around a large, shallow bronze bowl. It's filled with oil and petals, and above it hang tiny ceramic chimes, shaped like open mouths. Every time the wind stirs them, they let out a soft clink, the sound of the unspoken. A priest murmurs beside you. Tonight's ceremony is part exorcism, part lullaby. The aim: to draw out and pacify the so-called yawning spirits, ethereal fragments of human fatigue believed to linger in the body, tempting you to audibly stretch your jaw and disrupt social order. The lead priest steps forward, holding a scroll tied with plum-colored ribbon. As he reads, the flutes change tune, slow, more descending, like a staircase made of sighs. Each breath withheld, he says, is a gift to the silence. Each urge softened is strength. Let the breath stretch but not escape. You almost yawn just listening to it. But you resist. Just. Next, acolytes begin passing around small bundles wrapped in linen. You receive one. It's warm. Inside, a stone-smooth oval, and pleasantly cool. These are rest stones, meant to be held during the ceremony to anchor the spirit while it floats near sleep. You try it. It's oddly calming. Like hugging a very boring pet. The ritual reaches its apex when the youngest acolyte, a girl barely past 12, walks to the center, lifts a horn of carved ivory, and releases the softest tone you've ever heard. It's almost not a sound, more a sensation like a chill that ripples across your skin but doesn't make you shiver. Around you, people close their eyes. You follow suit. You breathe. Deep, slow, in, out. And somewhere inside that breath, a memory stirs, of a time long ago, maybe not even in this life, when yawning was safe, when children laughed without warning and old women clucked their tongues and people didn't weigh every sound before letting it go. But the memory fades, and as the ceremony ends, the high priest rings a bell made of woven reeds, soft rustling, like wind through dry grass. Your yawn spirits, he says, are at rest. For now you open your eyes to see others bowing, not to the priests but to each other. It's not a religion, it's a shared etiquette. A public performance of mutual restraint, and in this world that's sacred, you exit quietly. As you leave the temple grounds, you pass a wall etched with strange markings, curved symbols, diagrams of human faces in various stages of yawning. Beneath them, a caption in Old Persian: "Silence is the breath after the breath." Historians still debate the true meaning of that phrase. Some say it implies that silence is the second exhale, what's left when nothing else remains. Others believe it was poetic justification for increasingly restrictive laws. You take one last look at the temple. The flutes begin again, this time more spaced out, like lullabies unraveling in slow motion. You start back toward the city, your rest stone still in your hand. And as you walk, you try it. A deep breath, a gentle stretch, a perfect silent yawn. And just like that, you feel it. The yawn spirit has left you for now. It's late now. The kind of late where stars feel closer than buildings. You wander through the quieter part of Susa, where homes crouch lower, alleys grow narrower, and lanterns flicker like tired thoughts. And that's when you see it, a sandstone arch with a carved inscription above the lintel: Royal Academy of Controlled Expression, Department of Yawn Management. You blink. You weren't expecting an actual school for this. A small boy leans against the doorway, swinging his feet and nibbling on what looks like a sesame stick. He gestures with his chin. They're in session. He says, "Go on in. Quiet shoes only." You step through. Inside, rows of low benches line a large open room, all facing a dais where an instructor paces slowly, hands clasped behind his back. A bell made of cloth-covered bronze hangs above his head. The students, about 24 children, sit ramrod straight, heads bowed slightly, breathing in unison like they've rehearsed their own sleep. The instructor stops. "Today," he says softly, "we refine the art of ocular yawning." Your eyebrows lift. He continues, "This is the highest level of respect. No sound, no jaw movement, just the eyes." A yawn performed in the mind and shown through a soft blink. The children nod. He raises 2 fingers. "Begin," and you watch. One by one, they demonstrate a slow inhale through the nose. Shoulders droop just a little. Then blink, hold, exhale, silence. The effect is ... uncanny. It's like watching a crowd of very tired owls meditate. Then comes Shirin, a small girl in the front row, barefoot, eyes like almond moons. When it's her turn, the room seems to still. She doesn't just blink. She descends. You can feel her body soften like a leaf folding back into its stem. Her breath doesn't make a sound, but it pulls the entire room with it. When she opens her eyes again, everyone, including the instructor, sits there slack-jawed. "Excellent," he finally whispers. "Truly restorative." A few children clap without touching hands. Of course, you lean against a column at the back of the room, wondering what the admissions test must look like. Describe your most polite impulse. Bonus points if it's seasonal. Later, during recess, yes. Even in silent school, there's recess. You catch up with Shirin in the garden courtyard. She's watching ants circle a fallen fig. "Where'd you learn to yawn like that?" you ask, softly. She doesn't look up. "My grandmother," she says. "She used to say, if you must yawn in this world, do it with grace, or don't do it at all." A pause, then she adds, "I think yawning is like singing when you're too scared to sing." You sit beside her. She turns to you. "Do you think people in other cities yawn loud? You think of Babylon, of Athens, of markets full of shouts and music and people stretching out into the sun with careless, musical sighs." "Yeah," you say. "I think they do." Shirin nods. "I want to see that someday. A real yawn, like a lion." You smile. She grins on for a second. Just a second, lets her jaw drop open wide and loose and free, and then she snaps it shut with a laugh that sounds more like a hiccup. You both freeze. A teacher walks by, stops, raises an eyebrow. Shirin bows. "So do you." The teacher pauses, then whispers, "Keep your lions in the zoo, children." He walks on. You look at Shirin. She's biting her lip, trying not to laugh. "So are you." Historians still argue whether these yawn schools were practical institutions or propaganda tools. Some believe they were just elite academies to train diplomats and royal aides in the art of self-control. Others think they were a form of early behavioral engineering designed to instill obedience from childhood. Either way, they were effective. By the end of your brief visit, you find yourself sitting straighter, breathing slower, thinking twice before you sigh. It's contagious. This calm, like sinking into warm clay. But part of you itches, because now that you know the rules, you can feel them pressing against your ribs. Outside, the sky is a soft navy blue. Shirin waves goodbye. As you walk away, you hear her practicing tiny silent gasps through her nose, polishing her craft, preparing for a world that demands quiet even in exhaustion. You turn the corner and yawn, just a little louder than you should, because someone has to remember what wild feels like. Night again. Not the hush of ceremonial flutes or the golden silence of temples. No, this is the deep, dusty quiet of the royal archives. You didn't plan to be here. You were just looking for a place to rest, but the side door was open. The guard was snoring ironically, and you, being curious and moderately irresponsible, stepped inside. The scent hits you: first staged parchment, melted wax, and that unmistakable smell of old stories trying not to be forgotten. Torchlight flickers along rows of cubbyholes, each filled with clay tablets, bundled scrolls, or polished stone slates carved so thinly you swear they hum. And in the far corner, a table with a pillow, a reading pillow. Bless the scribes. You settle in, leaning back against the pillow's lumpy support. The table before you is scattered with materials: broken reed pens, a jar of ink the color of old plums, and one oddly shaped scroll sealed with what looks like beeswax and glitter. Okay, it's not glitter, it's powdered mica, but still, dramatic flair. You break the seal. Inside is a handwritten treatise, a taxonomy of yawns, with diagrams and punitive measures. Oh, this should be fun. The scroll is both hilarious and incredibly earnest. Someone, probably a court scholar with too much time and not enough fresh air, spent years cataloging every known type of yawn. There are names like the moonjaw, the swallowed trumpet, the crooked lament, and the silent scream of second sons. Each entry comes with a lovingly etched sketch, more figures with exaggerated faces and mid-yawn, looking like sleepy demons or bored fish. You stifle a laugh. Then comes the chart of penalties. Apparently, the moonjaw, defined as a full circle yawn with head tilt and arm stretch, carries the highest fine. Associated with arrogance, the crooked lament is more forgivable. It's often involuntary and commonly found among widows and accountants. And there in the margin is a note, scribbled in a different hand: some yawns are grief pretending to be tired. That one stops you because it feels ... right. You hear footsteps freeze, but it's just an elderly archivist, dragging a ladder, muttering to himself in that half-croaky, half-sing-song voice unique to people who spend more time with paper than people. He spots you, blinks, doesn't ask what you're doing here, just says, "If you're tired, don't snore." It echoes in the stone. You nod solemnly. He climbs the ladder, plucks down a slim volume bound in goat hide. Then he speaks again, almost wistfully. "Did you know," he says, "that in the oldest records, yawning was considered a sign of prophecy? They called it the mouth's compass, a way to sense when the world was turning. You hadn't heard that, of course," he adds. "Then came kings who wanted the world to stand still, and silence became sacred." He flips through the book and starts reading. You return to the scroll. Toward the end, you find an appendix: methods of concealment and the training of the jaw. It's basically a yoga manual for your face. Instructions include things like: relax the soft palate while engaging the posterior jaw. Think of cool clay, do not become it. Never yawn while standing on a mosaic depicting royalty. The tiles, remember. One drawing shows a man attempting to yawn while biting a fig. It's labeled advanced technique, not for beginners. Some historians believe these documents were part of a larger effort to turn bodily control into civic virtue. The ability to remain unmoved, unshaken, and most importantly silent was the mark of ideal citizenship. Others argue these manuals were satire, that the scholars were mocking the court without anyone noticing. After all, it takes a certain kind of cleverness to hide rebellion inside a diagram of a sleepy man next to a goose. You close the scroll, stretch your back, almost yawn, but you catch yourself. The archivist, still high on his ladder, mutters, "That one would have cost you 2 silvers and a letter of apology." You smile. He doesn't look down, but you think he's smiling too. You leave the scroll behind, back in its nest of other scrolls and forgotten wisdom. As you rise to go, you pass a shelf labeled MISC, censored by order of the 14th year. Half the spines are blank. One of them bears a single symbol, an open circle with tiny rays, the emblem of an unpunished yawn. You glance back once more, then slip through the door and into the night. The air outside is cooler now. You breathe deep, let the tired settle in. Your bones and as you walk, your footsteps barely make a sound, but in your chest, you feel it again, a stretch, a flicker, the ghost of a yawn waiting to bloom. You've barely rounded the corner when a hand grabs your shoulder. You don't scream because, well, that would be frowned upon, but your body jolts like a startled goat. The grip isn't rough, just firm, guiding. Wrong time to wander. A voice whispers you're on the schedule. Before you can respond, you're ushered through a narrow side gate and into a walled courtyard, dimly lit by moonlight and torch flickers. The door clicks shut behind you. A man in uniform steps forward. Not the typical palace guard with feathered helmet and an ego problem. No, this one wears all black. From his cloth-wrapped boots to the faintly embossed sigil on his chest, a closed mouth with crossed fingers beneath it. You've been mistaken for someone else. Someone on their list. Welcome to the barracks of the Royal Yawn Prevention Unit, or as they like to be called, the Quiet Keepers. They don't speak much. They don't need to. You're handed a scroll. The orders are brief. Tonight, Sector 9, courtyard sweep. Report any breach of silence. Protocol 11. Detain only if sound exceeds threshold. Confiscate contraband, pillows, herbs, incantations. Eyes open. You glance at the man beside you. He nods and tightens a sash. You try to protest, but another quiet keeper shushes you with a gesture so intense you feel your lungs apologize. Done just like that, you're on patrol. Sector 9 is one of the livelier quarters. Market carts, tailors, poets who still try to speak with their hands. Even the fountains here bubble louder than elsewhere. You trail behind your assigned partner, a woman whose eyes flick in every direction and whose gait is so smooth she might be floating. She stops, points. There, a man asleep on a rooftop hammock. Nothing unusual until he yawns. Loud, full, no shame. It echoes across the bricks. You both freeze. Your partner doesn't shout, doesn't draw a sword. She simply reaches into a satchel and pulls out a rolled scroll. She walks up the stairs.com/controlled. When she reaches the man, she gently taps his forehead and hands him the scroll. He doesn't argue, just bows his head, mutters something about dreams with teeth, and takes the citation. No drama, no dragging, but still he's marked now. And enough marks, they say, and you're sent to the reconditioning garden. You don't want to ask what that is. As you walk the sector, you notice things you hadn't before. Windows with padded frames, door hinges wrapped in cloth, cats trained to meow without vocal cords. Okay, that one might be exaggerated. There are even rumors, according to your partner, of sound sinks buried beneath certain homes. Clay pots designed to absorb echoes. And then there are the underground networks, not tunnels. People, whispers of groups who defy the silence, who gather at odd hours and forgotten places too. Yawn. Together. Loudly. They single quotes recalled the echo circle. And to the keepers, they're a threat. Not because of the noise itself, but because of the spirit behind it. Defiance disguised as fatigued. As you round a final alley, something drops from a window above. You flinch, but it's just a bundle wrapped in wool and tied with twine. Your partner opens it. Inside, a ceramic whistle shaped like a sleeping face. Contraband. She holds it up, taps it once, doesn't blow it of course, just slides it into her satchel and makes a tiny mark in a clay ledger she carries at her hip. Second this week, she murmurs. You walk on in silence. The stars are high now, bright and cold, and as you near the barracks again, your partner finally speaks. You're not one of us, she says, not accusing, just tired. You nod. Be careful, she adds. Silence can make you forget what your voice sounds like, and just like that, you're dismissed. No questions, no names. The gates close behind you. You stumble out into the street, heart thudding, head spinning. A team built to prevent yawns, to police breath, to measure the sound of sleep, and you accidentally, in their ranks for a night now, carry a scroll with your fingerprint pressed into wax, which means you're on record. For better or worse, historians still argue whether the Yawn Prevention Unit was truly feared or just part of the king's larger theater. Some say they were real, others say they were a myth, a bedtime story to frighten children into keeping their mouths shut. But after tonight, you know better. You walk faster now, back toward the center of town, trying to look normal, trying not to think about the cold whistle in that satchel, trying not to yawn, but of course, the more you try the harder it becomes. You clench your jaw, take a slow breath, and wonder if silence can be enforced. Can rebellion be whispered? You don't go straight home. That you really have a home here, just a rotating list of borrowed cots and shaded porches. But tonight, after your accidental infiltration into the Royal Yawn Prevention Unit, sleep feels vulnerable, exposed, like something that might be monitored. So instead you wander toward the part of Susa that lives beneath the surface. At first, it's just subtle, the smell of roasted nuts giving way to dried herbs, the polished stones of the plaza replaced by uneven gravel. The buildings seem to lean inward, like they're whispering secrets. You duck under an awning that smells faintly of old laundry and cumin and step into the Sharkium Ca Nungi MTT NGL. The night market of the sleep-deprived it doesn't have official signage, of course, it's just known. Pass between glances and muttered invitations, marked by a symbol scrawled in chalk, an open eye cradled in a crescent moon. And the moment you cross the threshold, the rules change. People are talking, not loud, but freely. Laughter crackles between stalls. A woman with gold-threaded braids is bartering for a bag of snore dust, a fine powder said to dull the nasal passages. Better than corks, she says, and less humiliating. Another vendor hawks tiny ceramic figurines shaped like mouths, midyawn, handmade. sculpted while tired, he shouts, each one imbued with authentic fatigue. You wander through rows of incense-woven sleep masks, fake scrolls advertising ancient herbal absolution, and something called a yawn mirror, a polished bronze disc said to absorb the sound of any yawn reflected into it. How does it work, you ask? The seller leans in. It doesn't, but it feels like it does. At one corner, a man plays a harp so softly it sounds like memory. Beside him, an older woman with a tray of vials offers a motion distillers tiny bottles, containing vaporized dreams, bottled regrets, and something she calls prion elixir. Supposedly, if you sniff it, you'll feel the pleasure of yawning without actually doing it. You try it, it smells like cinnamon and heartbreak. The deeper you go, the stranger it gets. You pass a booth where people lie motionless on padded mats, watched over by attendants who record the slightest twitches on wax tablets. What's this? You whisper. Dream mapping, one of the attendants replies. We chart the dreams of those too afraid to yawn awake. You raise an eyebrow. What do you do with the maps? He shrugs. Nothing. We just like knowing someone dreamed. Past the mats is a tent with silk curtains tied open to reveal a circle of seated figures. They wear robes of varying shades and have a strange serenity about them. A sign reads, Echo Circle tonight's theme, yawning as resistance. You hesitate, but then you recognize her. Shirin from school. She's here, seated at the far end of the circle. Her eyes meet yours, and for a moment she looks shocked. Then she smiles. You slip into a spot near the edge. A man with a trimmed beard and ink-stained fingers speaks. The yawn, he says, is the last honest gesture. The last thing they haven't turned into performance. Someone across from him chimes in. They made it illegal because it reminds them that we're still animals, still flesh. Sharon adds softly, and tired of pretending. Then, together, the circle begins. Not loudly, not defiantly, but with purpose. A slow, synchronized inhale, shoulders loosen, necks roll, and then it happens. The yawns, long, deep, audible, echoes of exhale. Not laughter, not anger, just exhaustion. Made public, human. You feel it rise in your throat, and this time you don't stop it. You yawn, fully. It's not rebellious, it's not even brave, it's just real. The echo circle doesn't cheer, doesn't clap. They nod. Somewhere outside the tent, a patrol of quiet keepers walks by. Everyone falls still. Shirin places a finger to her lips. The tent holds its breath. The patrol moves on, and the circle begins. Again soft, subtle but insistent. Historians, to debate whether these markets and circles were tolerated or simply ignored. Some argue the authorities allowed them as pressure valves. Others insist they were hunted down ruthlessly, their names etched into forbidden ledgers and erased from monuments. The truth, it probably depends who was watching and whether or not they were tired. You leave just before sunrise, the market folding in on itself like a dream. You're already forgetting. You walk back toward the city center with a bottle of prion elixir in your pocket, a tired smile on your lips, and the distinct memory of your first illegal yawn echoing in your chest. By the time the sun begins to stain the horizon gold, you're somewhere far from the main roads. You didn't plan it that way, it just happened. One turn became two, the alleys narrowed, and soon the city above felt like a forgotten rumor. Pause before an arched tunnel half covered in vines and plaster, a faded mosaic above the entrance bearing a strange emblem. A wide-open mouth flanked by two curled sleeping cats. Beneath it, a line in Old Persian, down here you may breathe. Curiosity always wins. You step into the tunnel. It starts narrow, barely wide enough for your shoulders, but the further you walk, the cooler and wider it becomes. The air smells like damp clay and something earthy, moss maybe, or thyme. Soft lights glow from carved alcoves. No torches, no fire, just tiny lanterns filled with glowing beetle oil, humming faintly like lullabies in glass. You emerge into an open space and stop. It's not just a room, it's an entire city under the city stone. Arches stretch high above, supporting the weight of Susa like ancient ribs. Paths curve gently, designed not for haste, but for wandering. Fountains burble in careful corners. Hanging lanterns cast shadows like dreams. Caught mid-thought, and everywhere you hear yawns. Real ones. Unrestricted. Soft, loud, stifled. Free. No one. FLINCHES. No one looks over their shoulder. This is it. You've found caverns of the unquiet sleepers. They go by many names. The breathers, the deep yawns, the second wind society. But here, beneath the weight of silence above, they are simply people. People who got tired of being tired in silence. You walk slowly through the winding plaza. A boy sprawls on a blanket, with 3 dogs napping at his feet. A woman teaches her daughter how to stretch into a yawn without shame. A group of musicians, flute, lyre, and a curious stringed bowl instrument play a lullaby in reverse, waking the melody instead of putting it to sleep. Someone offers you tea. You accept. It's thick and bitter, made from roots that grow only in the shaded cracks of the city's foundation. The flavor lingers at the back of your tongue, like the memory of an unfinished sentence. A man with a braided beard approaches. His robe is patched in elegant squares, each from a different family. New, he asks. You nod. He gestures for you to follow, and together you make your way through an arch marked with stone reliefs of people in various stages of repose napping, stretching, yawning into the wind. This used to be a cistern, he says. Long ago it held the city's water. Now it holds its breath. You reach a great chamber filled with steps and cushions arranged in spirals. At its center, a stone platform carved with a sleeping lion. Around it, people are lying, not sleeping, not meditating, just resting, eyes open, breathing deep. This is the yawning choir, the man explains. They gather every day to keep the sound alive. He points to a bell made of clay and feathers hanging above. They'll begin soon. Stay if you like. You do. One by one, the participants inhale. A soft yawn echoes, then another dot and another. Soon the space becomes a chorus of human fatigue, layered and woven, rising and falling like tide water. There's no beat, no direction, just waves of breath, sighs, groans, yawns, small stretches, and murmured release. It's beautiful, not loud, not jarring, just real. A lullaby in reverse, not to fall asleep but to wake the parts of you that forgot how to rest. You sit with them for a long while. You don't remember when you join in, but you do. And your yawn, soft as it is, feels like it's been waiting lifetimes to be heard. Historians, if they ever discover this place, will argue over its purpose. Was it rebellion? Was it therapy? Was it a slow ritual of remembering what the body needs when the mind forgets? Some will call it superstition. Others, sanctuary.uh. You'll call it peace. As the session ends, someone brings warm towels for everyone to press to their faces. It's part of the ritual. A gentle goodbye, the man who led you in returns. You don't have to stay, he says, but you're always welcome. You nod. He presses something into your palm, a smooth disc of stone carved with the open lines. Yawn-proof, he says, that you've breathed where it's still allowed. You slip it into your pouch. And as you rise, stretch, and walk back toward the tunnels that lead to the surface, you don't even try to stifle your yawn. You let it echo, you let it sing. And for once, no one listens to punish. They listen to remember. You return to the surface just as the city begins to blink awake. Susa at sunrise is a quiet opera, murmurs, creaking shutters, the first splash of water in basins. And yet now, to your ears, the silence feels different, less mysterious, less controlled. You've been to the undercurrent. You've heard what silence tries to muffle, and you carry proof in your pocket. The stone from the choir of yawns is warm in your palm. You wrap it in cloth and tuck it away, and then you arrested, well, not arrested more like gently intercepted by a trio of robed figures outside a ceramic shop. They wear the insignia of the royal judiciary, a stylized scale held by a finger pressed to the lips. One of them, an older woman with a very sharp nose and absolutely no time for jokes, taps her staff once on the cobblestones. You, she says, are late for your soul audit. You blink. My what? She sighs silently, of course, and points to your satchel. The fingerprint on the scroll you received during last night's incident. It flagged a pattern. You are now scheduled for auditory review and internal judgment. You'd protest, but you've learned by now, in Susa, the less said, the better, so you go. You're escorted to a circular building near the palace edge. No windows, just a single round entrance and a hanging bell above it split down the middle, never rung. The sign above the door reads, Court of Internal Sounds. Inside, it's colder. The walls are lined with shelves of hollow reeds, each labeled in ink, whispers, murmurs, snorts, suppressed burps, and one particularly large shelf labeled, simply, Mother-in-Law Tones. You're led to a shallow chamber with layered cushions on the floor, and a dais at the center where a man sits, robed in soft grays, eyes closed, hands resting lightly on an enormous tome. He opens one eye and smiles gently. Welcome, he says. Please sit. Let us hear what your sleep has been saying. You think it's a metaphor, it's not. The man gestures, and a scribe brings forward a thin clay tablet etched with glyphs. This, the judge says, is your breathing pattern from last night, captured from the reflective courtyard stones, quite irregular. I was tired, you mutter. Exactly, he replies, and that tiredness expressed itself. Loudly, he flips the page. Did you or did you not release an unlicensed yawn at approximately the 3rd hour before dawn, near the night market district? You look around the chamber. No one's scowling. In fact, they seem almost curious. Yes, you say. There's a pause. The judge nods. And did that yawn carry intention? You hesitate, because what does that mean? Intention. Was your yawn a biological reflex, or was it, in some small way, an act of rebellion, a protest against tired bones and invisible rules? The judge taps a stylus against his chin. Many believe a yawn cannot carry meaning, but some yawns, he says slowly, are louder in spirit than in sound. Then he closes the tome and leans forward. Tell me a dream, he says. You blink. What a dream from last night. It's customary, you think. The images are slippery like wet silk. I dreamed, you begin, that I was floating in a pool of warm honey and everyone was snoring. But the snoring made music, like flutes, and then my teeth fell out. The judge smiles wider. A classic authority anxiety mixed with latent sweetness. You're fine. He waves the scribe away. Verdict yawn admitted, intent ambiguous, dream sufficient. No punishment. But he adds a note in the margin. Possible future Echo Circle member. Watchlist. Passive. Lovely. As you're escorted out, the judge offers one last comment. Do you know why we ask for dreams? He says. You shake your head. Because we cannot punish what hides in sleep, only what dares to wake. You leave the court of internal sounds lighter than you entered. Not because you're free of suspicion, you're not, but because something has shifted. You're not just drifting through the city anymore. You're becoming part of its story. Historians rarely mention the soul audits of Susa, perhaps because they were too strange, too intimate. A mix of bureaucracy and poetry. A system that punished yawns but listened to dreams. Some argue it was a psychological tactic to make people believe even their thoughts weren't safe. Others believe that judges were sincere, that they wanted to understand, that beneath the absurd laws and silence taxes, there were real questions. What does tiredness reveal? What does noise conceal? And how do you measure intention in something as small as a sigh? You step back into the sunlight, stretch your arms, yawn softly. And this time it's not for rebellion, it's for release. By now, your body has grown used to the weight of Susa, not the physical one, though that's considerable, with its endless layers of stone, rulebooks, and unspoken expectations, but the emotional one, the constant hum beneath the silence, the fatigue of thinking before every exhale. So when the guards hand you a travel pack and a scroll, sealed with the crest of the Royal Transport Officer, a smiling camel wearing earmuffs, you don't argue. You're being exiled. No, not quite. The scroll reads, Assignment of temporary departure for civic recalibration. Recipient to be relocated to Outer District 3 for a period of 1 moon. Purpose, distance-induced restoration of compliance. You stare at the scroll. You've been politely kicked out. They call it a recalibration, a change of scene to reset. Your auditory discipline, you call it what it is, a banishment with a pillow. They send you off on a camel, a large, unimpressed creature named Tam. His saddle is made entirely of stone, literal stone. Not polished, not carved, just heavy. You're told this is part of the experience. The jostling sharpens the breath. The handler says, handing you a pouch of dried melon and a knitted jorab. Wear this if you feel a yawn coming on. The knitted fabric is embroidered with a single phrase in tiny stitches. Be silent, but not erased. And off you go. The ride is long, dry, and oddly calming. The landscape changes slowly, like someone sliding shades of brown and gold across a giant canvas. Hills roll lazily in the distance. Trees appear like half-hearted punctuation marks. In an otherwise unbroken sentence of dust, you begin to doze. Then Tam jolts. You doze again. Another jolt. Eventually, you give in and let the rhythm of discomfort lull you into something like half-sleep. You start dreaming with your eyes open. You see lions yawning in the distance. You see a fountain-shaped woman made of sighs. You see your own mouth open and a whole kingdom spill out. When you arrive at Outer District 3, it's not what you expect. It's not a camp, not a prison. It's a town. Small, sun-drenched, quietly bustling. People walk slowly here, not with the rigid alertness of Susa, but with a kind of casual mindfulness, like they're aware of time, but not chasing it. You're greeted by a man with a hat shaped like a folded fan and sandals that squish softly. Welcome to Narmasher, he says. We don't say much here, but we don't punish it either. You blink. Wait, is this legal? He grins. Technically, we're a rest zone, the kind of place the capital needs to exist but doesn't talk about. You follow him through narrow streets lined with sun-bleached linen and low-roofed houses. He points things out as you go. The Yawn Library, a collection of recordings and reenactments of historic yawns, carefully annotated for texture and sincerity. The Breathwell, a stone circle where people go to sigh in groups. The Pillow Exchange, where villagers trade sleep, supports by feel, not sight. There's also a cafe, he adds. It serves only warm milk, date, paste, and stories. You stay there for days. You learn the local customs. Here people greet each other with a small yawn, more like a breath with meaning. You join a morning class called Stretching Without Apology. You help an old woman knit jorabs with quotes embroidered inside them. Yours says. A yawn is a hand reaching from the inside. And slowly, something happens. You stop bracing every time your throat twitches. You start trusting your own rhythm again. You even stop noticing when others yawn. It becomes background music, like wind in trees or water in pots. Historians rarely write about Narmes. It wasn't politically relevant. It didn't revolt or innovate, but it may have saved people in quiet ways, offered them a middle ground, a place where silence wasn't sacred or suspicious. It was just optional. Before you leave, the man in the fan-shaped hat gives you a bundle. Inside is a stone round, smooth, and surprisingly light. This is Mama Rikabe, he says, sleep marble from the hills. Carry it when you're in places that want to hold your breath for you. You press it to your forehead. It's cool. When the camel comes for you the next morning, Tam actually sighs as you climb on. You take it as a compliment. The journey back is less jarring this time. Maybe the stone saddle has softened. Maybe you have. You return to Susa, changed but not louder, not defiant, just open. When you step back through the gate, no one stops you. No one says a word. But a nearby merchant, arranging pomegranates, glances at you and yawns. Open, gentle, free. You smile and return the favor. By now, you've heard a lot about yawns. You've practiced them, suppressed them, studied them. You've received citations, praise, exile. You've even participated in a yawn choir. So it's strange, almost surreal, when one afternoon in Susa, under a fig tree that smells vaguely of roasted sugar and dust, you hear someone say, "There was a time when yawning meant greatness." You glance up. The speaker is old, properly old, the kind of old that makes you think in seasons, not years. His beard reaches his waist. His sandals have seen dynasties. He's carving a spoon from a piece of tamarind. Wooden doesn't look at you as he continues. In the early reign of Darius I, he says, a yawn was considered a sign of divine approval. It meant the gods were listening. You raise an eyebrow. He finally glances at you, smiles like a secret. They even had a contest, and that's how you learn about the great imperial yawn festival. He tells it like a bedtime story, and honestly it feels like one. According to him, in the earliest days of empire building, before the obsession with control and silence, yawns were revered. The bigger the yawn, the more prophetic the person was believed to be. A properly executed high-arched yawn with visible molars and full body stretch was once called the blessing arc. Every spring, people would gather in Persepolis for a 3-day festival. There were contests, rituals, ceremonial yawn recitations. Families would dress in their best silks and line up before judges who rated yawns by depth, duration, and emotive resonance. There was even a scoring chart: 1 point for involuntary yawns, 2 points for symmetrical shoulder roll, 3 points if you brought tears to your own eyes, bonus if you made others yawn in sympathy, and the winner, the imperial yawner, given a laurel crown of woven fig leaves and the honor of speaking first at that year's royal feast. The last winner was a baker's son, the old man says, tracing the rim of his spoon. He yawned so well, birds landed near him. Even the judge yawned so hard he had to sit down. You laugh, but quietly, of course. Historians today don't agree on the festival's legitimacy. Some say it was real, a once venerated tradition erased by later regimes. Others claim it was a parody invented by bored scribes. Still others believe it was simply a metaphor, the yawn being symbolic of openness, rest, and receiving messages from the beyond. You ask what happened to it. The old man shrugs. Artaxerxes, that man, didn't like signs he couldn't control. After that, the festival was quietly removed from the civic calendar. The statues were taken down, the scoring rubrics burned, the laurel crown buried under stone, and then came the laws, the decrees, the silence. But you can still find it, he says, tapping the spoon on his knee. In stories, in old houses, in the way people sometimes stretch just before speaking their truth. You nod. You've seen that, felt it. You sit with him a while longer. He teaches you how to carve a spoon, how to pick wood that remembers warmth, how to listen to a branch before cutting it. And when you finish, your spoon has a knot in the shape of a curled mouth. You've got the festival in your bones. He says later that night, you walk through the market with a spoon tucked in your sash like a talisman. You pass a woman humming softly as she roasts nuts, her rhythm matching your steps. A child tugs on his mother's sleeve and yawns openly, freely. No one scolds him, no one reports it. You realize something then. The rules still exist. The laws still breathe down your neck like hot wind. But the memory of yawning freely, it also survives in stories, in spoons, in dreams people half remember but can't quite say aloud. You take a seat beneath a tapestry hung between 2 fig trees. It shows a lion mid-yawn, not roaring, yawning, its mouth open, not in aggression, but in ease. And for a moment, you imagine the festival coming back, not as rebellion, not as mockery, but as healing. A gathering where people open their mouths, not to argue or impress, but to let go, to breathe, to stretch together. A ritual of exhaustion shared and understood. You lean back, yawn. Someone nearby joins you, then another, then another, and somewhere in the city a memory stirs, not loud but persistent. There are whispers now. They slip between market stalls, drift under laundry lines, perch on ledges like gossiping pigeons. At first it's just murmurs. Did you hear? Someone yawned in the palace garden? 3 in one day, all unlicensed. Then the tone changes. Someone didn't apologize. That gets attention. You're back near the palace wall, sitting beneath an apricot tree that drops fruit like small, sticky reminders of gravity. You nibble one absent-mindedly, juice on your thumb. When you hear it, they say he did it on purpose. You tilt your head right in front of the guards. The voice continues. Yawned like a lion and smiled while doing it. You glance over. The speaker is a delivery boy, dusty elbows, patchy mustache, energy like a rattled jar of bees. His audience, a group of water haulers in sweat-dark tunics. Faces half damp, half fascinated. The boy lowers his voice dramatically. The man's name was Harun. Old soldier, retired, lives by the southern well, lost 2 fingers in the third border conflict. Said he was too old to hold and sleep. The crowd shifts. Someone snorts. He'll be lucky if he still has a tongue. But others are quiet. And that quiet says something. Later that evening, curiosity pulls you south. Past the city's quieter quarters, where the air smells like cumin and cooled bronze, you find the well. You find the old soldier. He's exactly as you imagined, except ... taller. He sits on a low wall, legs spread, shoulders relaxed, looking at the sky like it owes him something. You approach, say nothing. He doesn't look at you, but he knows you're wondering why I did it, he says. You nod, he chews on a reed. You ever been in a war? You shake your head. Then you don't know what it's like to lie awake, hearing yourself breathe and wondering if it'll give you away. He plucks the reed out and flicks it. I spent 2 decades not yawning, not sighing, not cracking a knuckle. You know what I got for it? A medal and a back that folds like bad parchment. He looks at you. I yawned because I wanted to. Simple as that. You sit beside him. The sky darkens to a velvet that even silence can't pierce. I used to think control made me strong, Harun says. Then I realized. Strength isn't about holding it in. He leans back, stretches and yawns. No one nearby stops him. No one dares. And you know, in that moment, something has shifted. Word spreads fast, and Susa always has. But this time it doesn't just pass from ear to ear, it settles into people's shoulders, their jaws, their breath. Because once someone like Harun does it publicly, unpunished, it gives permission. Not official, but emotional. Spiritual. The next morning, a vendor in the northern square lets out a big one while unloading baskets of lentils. A palace gardener yawns while pruning a fig tree and doesn't apologize. A poet, mid-performance, pauses for a dramatic effect, but because he's tired and the audience waits, a yawn becomes part of the rhythm, not the disruption. Some say Artaxerxes heard about it and laughed. Some say he broke a dish. Some say he yawned himself. Historians, as usual, can't agree, but the shift is real. You see it everywhere, in the way people greet each other with a little less stiffness, in the way no one flinches at a yawn from a tired mother or a passing guard. Even the quiet keepers begin to lose their sharpness. They still patrol, still watch, but they've stopped handing out citations for soft, sleepy slips. That the rules don't vanish, but they begin to soften. The silence stays, but now it shares the space with breath, with sleep, with a kind of collective exhale. The city doesn't fall apart. The walls don't crumble. The stars don't rearrange themselves in horror. In fact, things feel more human. And as you sit in the plaza, head resting on your knees, spoon tucked behind your ear, stone token warm in your palm, you yawn. Not rebel. Not to signal just because you're tired. And for the first time since you arrived in Susa. No one turns their head. The days grow slower, not lazier, not dull, just softer, like someone turned down the volume of the entire city by one careful notch. You notice it in the baker's rhythm, in the way he hums a lullaby between kneads of dough, in the children who yawn mid-shore and aren't shushed, in the air itself, which feels less ... brittle, less afraid of echo. Even the scribes have started writing a little differently. Fewer footnotes, fewer citations for unlicensed expression of exhaustion. One scroll you pass at a market store reads, "Let the body say what the mouth forgets." And underneath, in smaller script transcribed by permission of a half-sleep people, days have fallen into a kind of lull. You wake, you walk, you listen, you learn. You drink tea from cracked bowls and quiet courtyards. You trade yawn stories with former guards, now retired, into silence. You sketch lines into the margins of temple receipts and spoon carvings, and slowly you begin to dream more. Not just at night, but during the in-between times, waiting for figs to ripen, waiting for a pot to cool, watching a shadow move across a wall. You start dreaming about all the versions of this city that once existed. The loud one, where yawns were festivals. The quiet one, where yawns were crimes. And the current one, balanced on the edge of breath. You remember Shirin, the girl from the school, who now leads children in yawn stretching circles beneath the tamarind trees. You stop by sometimes. She sees you, smiles, yawns, teaches others to do the same. You remember the archivist, still tucked between scrolls, who once told you that silence was the breath after the breath. He now wears a sash that reads "License to sleep in public." Spaces. He's proud of it. You remember the soldier Harun, whose yawn cracked open something ancient in the city's ribs. He still sits by the well, still chews reeds. Now people stop to yawn with him, not in defiance, but in gratitude. And as the moon climbs high over Susa, you return one last time to the temple of slumber's breath. The flutes are quieter tonight. The chimes slower. You find your way to the bronze bowl, the one filled with oil and petals. You place your spoon beside it, and the stone from the yawning choir, and the jaw wrap with its stitched reminder, "Be silent, but not erased." You offer them, not as payment, but as memory. A priest you don't recognize bows to you, offers you a place among the others gathered for the closing rite. You sit. They begin. A slow inhale, a soft murmur, a hush that doesn't ask for silence, just for presence. You let it carry you, and in that space between breath and sleep, you understand something. Yawning was never the problem. Fear was, control was, and now, without anyone needing to declare it, Susa is healing, not loudly, but fully. Because sometimes all a city needs is one honest yawn, and one person who dares to let it out. You lie back, the flutes fade, the lamps flicker, your jaw loosens, and as your breath deepens, so does the dark around you. Velvety and kind, the petals in the bowl float without purpose. The chimes stop moving and Susa dreams. Closing 300 words now, the story dims. Like a candle that knows it's done its job, the sounds you've traveled through begin to settle, folding themselves into the corners of your mind like soft cloth. The flutes just breeze now. The oil lamps, gentle stars. Even the weight of the silence, the heavy, watching kind has become something gentler, something you can hold. You feel the stones of Susa still warm beneath your body. The breath in your chest, slow and full. The memory of laughter that never needed to be loud. Let all of that linger. Let your mind sink, like clay into cool water. Let the soldier's sighs, the flutist's breath, the old archivist's scratchy voice float just at the edge of your thoughts. There's no need to remember the laws now, only the softness they couldn't erase. If your muscles ache, let them melt. If your breath catches, let it flow. You are safe here, in a city that finally understands that rest is not rebellion. That silence can be beautiful, but not if it is demanded. And if a yawn comes, let it be wide, unafraid, and real. Let it carry you somewhere quiet, but not alone. Let it hum through your bones like a lullaby no one needed to sing. Because tonight, the only sound that matters is the one your body makes when it's ready to sleep. You did well. You listened. You learned. You breathed.